Picture this. It's late at night, your kitchen trash is overflowing, and you finally wrestle the bag out of the can. You're halfway to the bin outside when rip, garbage everywhere. That's the exact moment you realize not all trash bags are created equal. So here's the big question. If you're depending on a bag to hold the weight of your family's entire week of waste, which one do you trust more? Hefty or Glad? Both brands promise toughness you can rely on. Both swear they'll handle the mess without leaks or tears. But promises are easy. We want proof. In today's test, we're loading, stretching, leaking, and pushing both Hefty and Glad to their breaking points. And here's the twist. One of these brands actually fails way sooner than most people expect. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which bag can survive the messiest jobs, and which one might just leave you cleaning up after it. Welcome to Battle of the Brands, the channel where we take everyday products and put them through real tests to see which one truly earns a spot in your home. Now, trash bags might not be glamorous, but let's be real, they're one of the most important things we use every single day. When they work, we don't even think about them. But when they fail, it's a complete disaster. That's why today we're focusing on two of the biggest names in the game, Hefty and Glad. These are the brands most Americans grab off the shelf without a second thought. But do they actually deliver on strength, leak protection, and reliability? We're about to find out. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your kitchen trash bag the same way again. Before we start tearing these bags apart, let's take a closer look at what each brand promises. First up, Hefty. Known for their tagline, Hefty, 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 they market their bags as heavy-duty, extra strong, and made to handle the toughest messes. Their ultra-strong line highlights flex strength technology that's supposed to stretch without ripping, plus odor control options for those less than pleasant trash days. Price-wise, Hefty usually sits in the mid to upper range. Not the cheapest, but not the most expensive either. On the other side, we've got Glad. Their Force Flex bags are all about flexibility. Instead of brute strength, Glad emphasizes stretchable plastic that adapts to sharp or awkward trash. The brand also leans hard into leak protection and odor-neutralizing features, like Febreze scents. In most stores, Glad tends to cost slightly more per bag than Hefty. But the pitch is that you're paying for reliability and fewer accidents. So both brands promise toughness, both claim stretch and leak defense, and both are trusted by millions of households. But packaging promises and real-world performance don't always line up. That's why we're about to put these bags through controlled, messy, and sometimes brutal tests to see which one actually deserves your trust. Strength and capacity test. When it comes to trash bags, the number one deal breaker is simple. Can it hold the load without giving up? So for our first test, we're measuring raw strength and capacity. Here's how we set it up. Both Hefty and Glad bags were placed in identical bins. Then we started loading them up with heavy items that mimic real-life trash weight. Think water jugs, old magazines, and even canned goods. Every few pounds, we lifted the bags out of the bin to check for stretching, tearing, or early signs of failure. At first, both brands handled the weight with no problem. Around the 20 to 25 pound mark, we started to see the differences. Glad's Force Flex design really did stretch impressively, adapting to the shape of bulky items. But the stretching also made the bag look dangerously thin in some spots. Hefty, on the other hand, felt sturdier and resisted that thinning out effect, but it also didn't stretch quite as much. When we pushed past 30 pounds, Glad was hanging on, but you could see the strain. At 35 pounds, the first small tear appeared near the top seam. Hefty made it all the way to 40 pounds before showing signs of stress, and even then, it didn't rip clean through. So in terms of pure strength, Hefty takes the early win here. It held more weight overall, while Glad showed more flexibility, but cracked under heavier loads. Leak and puncture resistance test. Now, weight is one thing, but let's be honest. The worst kind of trash bag failure isn't when it drops heavy items. It's when it leaks. No one wants dirty liquid running across the floor. So for this round, we focused on leak and puncture resistance. We started by filling each bag with a mix of water, leftover food scraps, and some sharp-edged items like empty soda cans and broken down packaging. The idea was to simulate real trash, messy, uneven, and unpredictable. Glad's Force Flex actually impressed here. The stretchable material allowed sharp corners to press against the sides without instantly breaking through. For the liquid test, it held up longer than expected, no immediate leaks, even when the bag was swished around. Hefty, meanwhile, felt tougher in the hand, but its more rigid plastic didn't flex as easily. That meant when sharp corners pressed hard, there was more stress at those points. During our test, the first noticeable leak came from Hefty when a can edge poked through under weight. On the liquid side, though, Hefty redeemed itself slightly. It resisted seepage at the seams better than Glad. Still, once that puncture opened, liquid started escaping. Glad's material seemed to stretch and reseal a little bit, giving it the edge overall. So, in this round, Glad takes the win. It managed to fend off punctures better and kept the liquid inside longer. Everyday usability test. Strength and leak protection matter, but let's talk about the way most people actually judge a trash bag. Is it easy to use every single day? Because if a bag is a pain to open or constantly slips inside the bin, it doesn't matter how strong it is. For this test, we looked at the little details: opening the bag, securing it to the bin, tying it up, and carrying it outside. Glad had a clear advantage right away. The Force Flex bags were easier to separate and open, even fresh out of the box. The drawstrings felt sturdy and had just enough give to tight quickly without fighting them. When overstuffed, the stretch design also made tying a tight knot surprisingly simple. Hefty bags, on the other hand, felt tougher but a bit stiffer. Sometimes they were harder to get open, especially if the edges stuck together. Once loaded, the drawstrings held strong, but they didn't have as much give. That meant if the bag was overfilled, tying a knot felt like more of a struggle. Carrying both outside, neither slipped or tore, but in terms of daily convenience, Glad definitely felt smoother to use. So if ease of use is your priority, Glad edges out Hefty in this round.
Durability, stress test. Now it's time for the fun part, the stress test. This is where we take these bags beyond normal household use and see which one survives the kind of punishment no one would realistically put them through, but it sure tells us a lot about their durability. For this round, we filled both Hefty and Glad bags with a heavy mix of trash, then did 3 things: lifted and swung them, dropped them from shoulder height, and finally dragged them across rough concrete. The results were eye-opening. When swung back and forth, Hefty's thicker plastic gave it an advantage. It held tight and resisted tearing even under sharp jolts. Glad stretched, but that flexibility started to look risky. You could see the material thinning around the edges. On the drop test, Hefty once again stood strong. Glad survived the first drop, but split open slightly on the second, spilling some contents. And when dragged across concrete, both bags eventually gave out, but Hefty lasted noticeably longer before holes appeared. Bottom line, in extreme durability tests, Hefty clearly came out on top. Glad's flexibility works in controlled scenarios, but under rough treatment, Hefty's toughness won the round. Price versus value. Of course, strength and convenience don't matter if the price isn't right. So let's talk about value. On average, Hefty ultra-strong bags come in slightly cheaper per bag than Glad Force Flex Plus. Depending on where you shop, you might save a few cents with Hefty, and that adds up if you're buying boxes month after month. Glad, however, positions itself as a premium option. You'll often pay a little more for the flexibility and odor control features. The question is whether that extra convenience is worth the higher cost. If your household creates a lot of heavy, bulky trash, Hefty's lower price and higher weight capacity make it the better bargain. But if your biggest headache is everyday messes, leaks, or just wanting a bag that's easier to tie and handle, Glad may justify the extra money. So in the price to performance category, Hefty takes the edge for budget-conscious buyers, while Glad appeals more to people willing to pay for usability. So, in the price to performance category, Hefty takes the edge for budget-conscious buyers, while Glad appeals more to people willing to pay for usability. So, of the both bags that we tested, which one is the overall winner? For households that push trash bags to the max with heavy loads, Hefty takes the crown. But if your priority is clean handling and leak protection, Glad is still a strong contender. At the end of the day, the better bag comes down to your needs. So there you have it, Hefty versus Glad, tested in strength, leaks, durability, and everyday use. Both brands have their strengths, but only you can decide which one fits your home best. Now, I want to hear from you. Which bag do you use in your kitchen, and has it ever failed on you? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm curious to see if your experiences match what we found today. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Battle of the Brands. We've got more everyday product comparisons coming up, from paper towels to dish soaps, and you won't want to miss them. Until next time, remember, the best products aren't always the ones with the loudest claims. They're the ones that actually perform when it matters.